All right, so we are continuing with day 6 notes here. We're on problem number 4. The first thing that we'll have to do for problem number 4 is make sure that our problem is in standard form. Right now it is not, so we need to move all of our terms to the left side of the equal sign so the right side can be 0. To do that, we will add 7x to both sides, and we will add or subtract 39. These cancel. I'm left with 2x squared plus 7x minus 39 equals 0. Now I can label my A, B, and C. My A term is 2. My B is 7. And my C value is negative 39. Once I've done that, I can plug my problem into the quadratic formula. Remember, my quadratic formula is x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And when I'm plugging in my values to the formula, I want to make sure that I plug everything in parentheses. So I have x is equal to negative, then my b value of 7, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times my a times c all over 2 times a. And before we put this in the calculator, I want to double check that you guys wrote negative 39 for your C value. I circled the 39, didn't put it as the C, but I did type that into my quadratic formula. All right, now we'll grab our calculators and we will plug our formula into the calculator. So clear out what you have. First button is the fraction button. And then we'll type it in, negative parentheses 7 plus the square root of 7 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 39 all over 2 times 2. My first value is going to give me 3. X is going to equal 3. And remember, I have to run it again. I ran it the first time with the plus sign. I'll scroll up, click on it again, go back to the beginning, and change my plus sign to a minus sign, and run it again. My second answer is going to be negative 13 over 2. And these are my two answers for number 4. All right, moving on to number 5. Number 5 is also a problem that is not in standard form. So we're going to have to move this 9x to the other side. We'll add 9x and rewrite our problem. 2x squared plus 9x plus 7 equals 0. And now I can label my A, which is 2, my B, which is 9, and my C, which is 7. And we can plug this into the quadratic formula. X is equal to negative B plus and minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. We'll plug this one into our calculator as well. Remember, the first thing that you have to press is the fraction button. And we'll do negative times 9 plus the square root of 9 squared minus 4 times 2 times 7 all over 2 times 2. That gives me x equals -1. Don't forget we have to run it again. Scroll up. And remember, the trick that I showed you before was second, and then my left arrow takes me all the way to the front of the problem. I'll scroll over and change that plus to a minus. Run it again, and it gives me -7 over 2. And that is my answer for number 5. All right, now moving on to number 6. Remember, we have to get number 6 in standard form as well. So we'll subtract 2 from both sides so that we have 3r squared plus 7r minus 2 equals 0. Now I'll label my a, which is 3, my b, which is 7, and my c, which is -2. Now I can plug all of this into my quadratic formula. X is equal to -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. After you've written it down, back to the calculator to press the fraction button. We have -7 plus the square root of 7 squared minus 4 times 3 times -2 all over 2 times 3. This gives me 73 minus 7 over 6. But I always write it a little bit differently. I want to put my constant number in front and my square root in the back. So I have x equals -7 plus, so I just took that -7, moved it to the front, and then I'll have the square root of 73 over 6. The only thing that I switched was the -7 and 73. I just changed the order so that you can make sure that you're not getting your square roots and your constant numbers mixed up. And we want to run this again. We'll go back up and click on our problem, press second and the left arrow, and change my plus sign to a minus sign. Press enter. And the only thing that changes here is instead of positive 73 minus 7 over 6, I have negative 73 minus 7. So instead of writing two answers, I'm going to have plus 73 and minus 73. And this gives me my two answers for the quadratic formula for this problem. All right, now we're going to move to number 7. We don't have to reorder anything here. However, you see that we do not have a B term. So if I were to list out all my terms, I would have A. And A is going to be that invisible number in front of n squared, which is 1. I don't have a B term, so if I don't have one, it's 0. And my C is negative 144. So now I'll plug this into my quadratic formula. I have x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c and remember that's negative 144, all over 2 times a. If you remember this problem from previously when we've done this problem, you probably already know the answer, but I still want you to go through it with the quadratic formula just to see that it does work. So the first thing that we'll press is the fraction button, and we have negative 0 plus the square root of 0 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 144, all over 2 times 1. When I press enter, that gives me x equals 12. And you're going to run it again, scroll up and click on your problem, go back to the beginning, and run it again with a minus sign instead of a plus sign. Press enter, and it gives you negative 12. Yes, it probably would have been quicker to solve this a different way, but today we're doing the quadratic formula, so we just need to practice it with every problem. All right, last problem, number 8. First thing we need to do here is reorder my problems so that they're in standard form. To do that, I have to subtract 4a from both sides, and I'm left with 12a squared minus 4a minus 11 equals 0. I'll list my a value, which is 12, my b value, which is negative 4, and my c value, which is negative 11. And now I'll plug this into the quadratic formula. So I have x is equal to negative times negative 4 plus and minus the square root of negative 4 squared minus 4 times 12 times negative 11, all over 2 times 12. And we'll type this into our calculator. First button is always the fraction button. Then we have negative times negative 4 plus the square root of negative 4 squared minus 4 times 12 times negative 11, all over 2 times 12. Press enter, and this gives me the square root of 34 plus 1 over 6. Same thing as before, I'm just going to reverse it to where it's 1 plus the square root of 34 over 6. Just reverse that constant number and my square rooted number so that we don't get them confused. I'll scroll up, click on my problem, second, and back. Click over to the plus sign, change it to a minus sign, run it again. And instead of having a positive 34 this time, we have a negative 34. So I can just put a negative under that positive, and that is good for my 2 answers for my quadratic formula. All right, that concludes today's notes on Unit 9, Day 6 notes for quadratic formula.